For more discussion on biodiversity, we're joined by Changhua Wu. She's the Executive Director of the Professional Association for China's Environment. Welcome back to the show. China will host an international biodiversity conference in Kunming in October after delays due to COVID. What are your expectations for this gathering, and why is the fact that it's happening at all even significant?
I think the goal and the target for the COP15, that's what it's called, is very, very clear from the beginning. I think China as the host and also presidency of this COP, pretty much the aim is to bring working with the global community with UN to set something called post-2020 global biodiversity conservation plan or action plan or framework. So there are specific goals and targets that are going to be delivered, particularly around this particular framework, action-oriented, outcome-driven framework around how to conserve biodiversity, how to make sure we, sustainably use the components of biodiversity, as well as actually to make sure the equity and the fairness of the benefits that are arising from use of the, genetic resources from nature. So I think more than urgent than ever, we need to do that. Timing-wise, I think, yes, it should have happened last year, but somehow the pandemic, delayed everything. But it's also critical. It's never too late. And this year marks something more significant because 1 month after in Kunming, there will be the COP26 of the climate change issues there. So nature conservation and climate change are pretty much connected with each other. So I think to a certain extent, it adds further weight about the urgency and also significance of global consensus and commitments from global community to address biodiversity loss and as well as climate change issues.
Are China's biodiversity challenges unique, or are they common across borders around the world?
Well, I think each nation, depending where it's located, it definitely has unique features of biodiversity. But generally, I think China definitely is a part of the global community. We are literally talking about the risk, the threats of the planetary boundary. So yes, at the national level, it's important to deliver conservation biodiversity, but China is a part of the global community. We are part of the planet. We are all part of the biodiversity. So from that perspective, I think that's why the Kunming Summit, actually, Kunming COP becomes so significant that global community needs to come together and work with each other.
You can't see this, but we're showing some images. We've been showing some images of the beauty of China's biodiversity, its ecological landscape. Around the world, this isn't what really people think of when they think of images of China. They think of Beijing, maybe Shanghai. Why do you think it's important for China to prioritize, for the Chinese government to prioritize the saving of its biodiversity?
I think China represents a case. I think it's more like a case of the day that we're talking about why we need to preserve, biodiversity. As I said, we're all, humankind is a part of the nature. We are part of the ecosystem. We are part of the biodiversity. So what's happening now around, extinction of species, talking about the habitat loss, the fragmentation, so that requires humankind to work together. So for China, actually, a couple of ways of looking at that. If you look at actually the human basic needs, we pretty much obtain most of them actually from nature, right? If you look at food, water, shelter, fuels, even medicines. And nature also provides all the, we call it ecological services to humankind, like pollinations, seed dispersal, climate regulation, water purification, and even the control of agriculture pests, just to give some examples there. So we are part of nature, we rely on nature, and also actually the nature, actually biodiversity is the foundation, ecological foundation of human society and the human economic system. So if we're crippling, literally the foundation, just imagining what kind of risk or threats we're living in. So that's why fundamentally it's so critical to preserve, actually to protect the biodiversity, to protect the nature, so that our, the goal we pursue all together, we call it sustainable development, will be built on solid foundation of nature.
Critical indeed. Changhua Wu from the Professional Association for China's Environment. Thank you for joining us.